If someone was to visit Valencia right around 2008, they would have seen a city of grand success. Sprawling avenues lined with modern buildings in the new city center, cranes moving goods about, countless construction sites were new, astounding structures were being built, and the roar of F1 car engines were the things that would greet people in the city back then. A group of such cranes was well in motion from 2007 to 2009, building a replacement for the oldest football stadium in La Liga, Nou Mestalla, which dates back to 1923. A replacement of enormous scale with planned capacity at 80,000 spectators. A replacement that stands as an empty, unfinished shell to this date. The F1 engines fared a little better, roaring from 2008 to 2012, only for the deal to alternate the Grand Prix races with Catalonia to fall through in 2013. Since then, the almost 5.5-kilometer street circuit was partially dismantled for daily street use and mainly forgotten to weeds, looters, and dozens of homeless people who now live on its grounds. Just like the unfinished metro line covered on this series before, these two truly giant scale-wise investments in Valencia didn't live up to their potential, nor are they in use today. They are yet another gloomy reminder of the shockwave of economic constraint that struck the country hard when the crisis hit back in 2008, uncovering piles of greed, corruption, and pure mismanagement that governed many regions of Spain at the beginning of the new century. Formula One racing is a global phenomenon that brings in truckloads of cash into the hands of those involved every year, and this is a fact. Joining the elite circle of race hosts is not an overnight job, and that's a fact too. For Valencia though, this was rather a smooth process. Negotiations to become a host city for a Grand Prix began back in 2007, when the original premier, a member of the all-too-popular back-in-the-day Partido Popular, Francisco Cans, negotiated a deal with the former F1 chief Bernie Ecclestone. This negotiator later resigned in 2011 after being involved in one of the biggest corruption scandals in Spain and was later investigated again for alleged corruption related to the very race circuit in question. Cans managed to strike a 7-year deal which went the way of the dodo as quick as 2012 and left a hefty budgetary constraint for the regional authorities for years to come. The construction work alone resulted in a €100 million debt, with further €111 million being paid as a licensing fee to F1. The regional TV station, Canal 9, shelled out €4.4 million on broadcast rights, and there was also an additional dubious purchase made by the Valencian government. It purchased Valmore Sports, a company carrying more than €30 million in debt alone, for just a single euro. This corporate body was allegedly then used by the government under Cans to act as a front company for the wasteful spending, disguising the fact that the entire F1 shenanigans in Valencia were publicly funded. This expensive bill is being paid for up to this day. According to Maria Jose Salvador, an ex-advisor on public works under the still-running Ximo Puig regional government in Valencia, between 2016 and 2023, €7.5 million annually have to be paid back for the construction costs of the street circuit alone. This doesn't account for all the other expenditures that were just mentioned. What was all of this for, one might ask? According to Cans, this project was meant to put Valencia on the map. The funding for it was to be originally derived from ambitious rapid redevelopment of the Poblados Marítimos district. This seaside area was home to many industrial establishments in the past, and according to the politicians, had all the potential to become a new upmarket spot on the map of the city. These plans were obviously verified in 2008, with the onset of the crisis resulting in virtually no such development taking place. The Valencia street circuit stands to this day among deserted, desolate ruins of old factories and empty plots of land that were meant to house people and companies in these ambitious plans. How was the circuit itself while it was still being used? Almost 5.5 kilometers of road and 25 turns, a 140-meter swing bridge, sea view. It might sound like the perfect location for an F1 Grand Prix. Perhaps it wasn't all that bad, but the track faced critique nonetheless from the drivers for its too long straights and a lack of overtaking opportunities during the race. In the end, it also lost, in what was probably the most controversial decision to allow for this to happen in the first place, to a second track located in Spain, that in Barcelona. There was simply no place for two Spanish Grand Prix in the crowded F1 calendar, and Valencia's ambitious street circuit was just mothballed. Today, one can easily follow most of the track on foot, as many sections of it have been since converted to serve as city streets and pedestrian walkways. There are many hints as to the original purpose of the infrastructure everywhere. Racing fences, pit stops, sponsors marking on the pavement, all of this remains to this day. There is also a whole locked down section of the track, occupying a huge part of the district, which hosts a flagship turn sporting the regional logo. An eerie reminder of what it means to waste public funds at the worst time possible. This area is also now, quote-unquote, home to many homeless shacks and illegal waste dumps, and sometimes sees a car or two that manage to sneak via one of the many holes in the perimeter fence surrounding it, driving around its bends. If anything, the Valencia street circuit now serves as a symbol of ludicrous bets that the local governments in Spain used to place on infrastructure, and how it was meant to draw attention of investors in the real estate market. Bets that, in pretty much most cases, never paid off. Valencia used to be, at the beginning of the new century, home to one of the best football teams in the world. The sport is big in the city, with the current Mestalla stadium being the oldest one in the Spanish league, dating all the way back to 1923. It's a classic, but a classic that's a pain for the modern day. The complete absence of elevators, narrow stairways, and the lack of a roof over the seats, the problems are mounting on the aging structure day by day. The days of Mestalla are though numbered. In the 1990s, a renovation took place, raising one of the stands beyond the height limit established by the city, and after a long legal battle, the local residents won with the club, which is obligated to demolish the overly tall section before 2023. This is not economically feasible for the club, which has been in a dire financial situation for years. As of this day, it faces a risk of having no place to play at all, as building a new stadium is the only way to go. This is especially puzzling for some, as not more than a couple of blocks away, an enormous concrete shell of the Nou Mestalla stadium stands unfinished. Work here started in 2006 and ended abruptly in 2009 after the club ran out of funds following the onset of the financial crisis in 2008. Nothing could have been done back then. The old chairman, Juan Soler, himself was a real estate mogul whose small fortune was derived from the very market that crashed. The Nou Mestalla was a costly project at an initial planned investment of 344 million euros. It was meant to host the biggest matches. As a matter of fact, it was to house the 2011 Champions League final, provide 80,000 seats for spectators, shock with its futuristic design, and make Valencia great again. Moreover, the team was meant to celebrate its centenary here in 2019, and as I can say from experience after viewing that match in sight, it surely was held at the good old Mestalla. More than 100 million euros were directed to the project by the club before the works were halted indefinitely in 2009, and since then, nothing has changed. The concrete shell of the stadium stands to this day, weathering more day by day, reminding those passing by about how much the crisis has changed the very world that we live in. In the meantime, the club changed hands, and plans for the new venue took different turns as well. 2 redesigns took place, and currently, after the second one, the club still needs some 100 million euros to cover the construction costs. The new stadium will be able to host around 55,000 spectators, much less than the originally planned 80,000, and will also be far more simple in its presentation. Importantly, up until March of this year, everything looked much brighter for the club, as it had a buyer for the current stadium, who after reaching a preliminary agreement was to pay 130 million euros for the old venue. Aldo Mediterráneo, a local cooperative, had the preemption right to the piece of land under the stadium and expressed much interest in carrying through with the transaction. Quite ironically though, partially due to the economic slowdown caused by the global COVID-19 pandemic, it failed to provide the financial guarantees at the beginning of the year, rendering the deal as expired and non-binding. Valencia therefore remains with one of 3 ways to go: pursuing a new deal with Vado Italiano, finding a new buyer, or waiting for the current owner, Pedro Lim, to inject funds now and sell the stadium later. What will become of this? No one knows. The Nou Mestalla is now being halted by a second looming financial crisis, and if the consequences of it don't allow for the club to move forward with the construction before 2023, it might be left with no place to play matches at all. The city itself is also pressuring the club to take action, as the concrete shell is a truly devastating eyesore in an upmarket area of Valencia. Talks were underway back in 2019 if demolition was not going to be the best course of action for the structure, proving the point that the issue at hand is not only urgent, but also developing. If Valencia is not able to find a solution to their home stadium debacle anytime soon, who knows what will become of this once beloved team. Furthermore, what could be a more apparent show of the scale of damage done by the 2008 crisis in places like this Mediterranean wonderland? Thank you for watching, and until next time on the Spanish Era 404.